This week on Arizona Illustrated, officers take a step back to bring calm to crisis. German POWs roaming Arizona's deserts in the waning days of World War II. Art and unconditional love. And the Jarvik 7 artificial heart from the vault. Welcome to Arizona Illustrated. I'm Tom McNamara. When police respond to a call, they can very often step into an intense, volatile situation. Sometimes it'll involve someone in the midst of a mental health crisis. It is then that many Tucson officers rely on unique and effective training that came to be as the result of a tragedy.
It's a crisp Friday morning, and Tucson police are talking a jumper off a ledge.
I had these shoes that would allow me to, I can bounce. I can just bounce over the traffic. I can make sure that everything looks okay.
Why don't you come over here and show me those shoes? I'd like to see them.
The exchange is serious business, but today, no one's life is on the line. These officers are taking part in Pima County's Crisis Intervention Team Training, or CIT.
Let me think about it.
Over 40 intense hours, they're learning what to do when they're called to help someone who's having a mental health crisis.
Where'd you get those shoes from?
I found them this morning. They were under my bed.
We have attorneys come out, a judge come out, and he talks about mental illness. We have a psychiatrist come out. He talks about different diagnoses, different medications, and how to interact with somebody that might be in an acute state.
Give me my stinking clutch!
We also have instruction on de-escalation techniques. So it's not just about talking to the individuals that suffer with a mental illness. It's a lot of other professionals in the community that come out here and are pretty passionate about giving the time to the officers to make sure that we're doing what we can.
The officers learn from a range of experts about the medical, legal, and day-to-day realities of mental illness. They also talk to people who are living with mental illness and their family members about what it's like to experience a mental health crisis and what has helped or harmed them when dealing with law enforcement.
When you go on your calls, just be aware of it.
Above all, officers learn to see the person within the crisis and not just the diagnosis or the behavior. For training coordinator Sergeant James Kirk, a cancer survivor, that hits very close to home.
We try to teach them as well, to look at the person and not say he's a schizophrenic, because, people don't look at me and say he's a cancer. He's somebody that suffers with a mental illness, and they are a person aside from that, and they have dreams and hopes and lives just like us.
It was really hard to be at the point that I am right now.
Kirk ran CIT trainings for 8 years before his retirement from the Tucson Police Department. Along the way, he helped train SWAT team members, probation officers, and police from Tucson, Marana, and the Pima County Sheriff's Department. He says the program can have a huge impact on even the most seasoned officers.
And I'll be the first to admit, being a cop for 25 years, we get a little bit cynical. And you start looking at everybody in the same light. And so you come here and most of the officers go, I need to take a step back and to maybe take a look at individuals in a different light and maybe consider that there may be other factors that I don't know about. We had a SWAT sergeant that went through the class a couple years ago, and he's kind of your, when he came into the class, I'm like, I wonder how he's gonna embrace the class. He's a tough guy, he's got a tough attitude, and he went through the class, and at the end of the week he said it was one of the best classes that he went through in his 20-year career.
The classes aren't just engaging, they're also effective. A 2011 study by researchers at Emory University and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation found that CIT-trained officers are significantly less likely to use force with someone in a psychiatric crisis.
And when somebody is agitated, and we go in there and we agitate the situation more, all we really do is create a more agitated situation. So we want them to go in, and we teach them to go in and just take a breath, slow down, take your time, be calm, and time is on our side in these situations where people are in crisis.
It helped me get back on my feet.
Crisis Intervention Team training was developed in Memphis, Tennessee in the late 1980s, but it took over a decade to make its way to Tucson, and its path here began with a tragedy. Retired NYPD detective Joseph Mashensky watched his son find success in the Tucson restaurant business despite periodic bouts of depression. But by September of 2000, work pressures and relationship troubles sent his son spiraling into a crisis.
Next thing I know, we get a call a couple minutes before midnight, saying there's going to be no tomorrow.
Mashensky called the police, hoping they could help track down his son. He soon learned the young man was in his apartment and rushed there with the police close behind. Then the police asked him to leave.
I wouldn't leave, and they physically forced me to leave, made me go downstairs. Right? Next thing I know, or we know, we're sitting downstairs at the bottom of the steps. There's another sheriff's deputy comes in a sheriff's jumpsuit with a dog. And they take the dog up there. And we could hear screaming and yelling. And then all of a sudden there are 4 shots. Right? I ran up the stairs. The dog is tied on the 2nd floor. My son lives on the 3rd floor. He's tied on the stairs on the 2nd floor. I go up there, and my son's laying dead in the doorway of his apartment. I tried to run to my son, and they tackled me and forced me to the ground and forced me to leave again.
In the wake of his loss, Mashensky heard about the Memphis program and decided to take a closer look.
And from 1988 up until 2000, they had only killed 6 people in these types of situations. Here in Tucson at that time, we were killing 6-8 people a year in these situations. Right? Then 85% reduction in arrests, 40% reduction in injuries to people with mental health issues, 90% reduction in injuries to officers. All these statistics, I said, hey, this is a better program. We got to do something like that.
With the support of the Community Partnership of Southern Arizona, Mashensky traveled to Memphis, learned the CIT curriculum, and soon rallied the support of community members and law enforcement and behavioral health agencies.
We had about 40 people meeting once a week. We put all the curriculum together with the Sheriff's Department, with the Tucson Police Department. And my son was killed in September of 2000. In April of 2002, we had our first CIT class.
Since then, CIT has quickly grown. There are now nearly 3,000 CIT programs nationwide, and hundreds of officers have been trained in southern Arizona alone. Officer Brandon Tatum of the Tucson Police Department would like to see the trainings grow even more.
Is he saying that he's in denial, or is it just he can't structure himself enough to continue to take his medication?
After 2.5 years on the job, Tatum sought out CIT training and found it invaluable.
I really wish that everybody that is in law enforcement, everybody in my division and everybody in the department have some sort of training, because I think that over the years there have been a disconnect between law enforcement and citizens, and they feel like we don't understand them, we're too aggressive, and I think that can be, displayed, in a bad way if we don't understand. And I think that with training like this, it helps us bridge the gap.
Tatum says he learned to approach a crisis with more compassion, and that's exactly what Joseph Mashensky has hoped and worked for.
I think people are becoming more aware of what's happening, that people with mental health issues need to be treated fairly, they need to be treated right, and I think that's starting to happen, at least in our community.
Now Mashensky is pushing for the University of Arizona Police Department to take part in CIT. The UAPD has cited its extensive on-campus mental health resources and its in-house training program as the reason it hasn't participated. The university is proud of its self-sufficiency, says UAPD spokesperson Sergeant Filbert Barrera.
We do a really good job communicating with these students and caring for these students to get them the services on campus and off campus. But I will say, from the department standpoint, I would say that any further training or anything that would provide a different perspective, I think it would be a good thing.
Mashensky says the perspective that CIT provides can protect officers and save lives. And in a way, it has saved his life too.
We had this unfortunate incident. I worked probably 60 hours a week. It gave us something to do. Now, to be truthful, I feel very good that I think we've accomplished. And again, I don't want to take the credit. It's not just us. It's the community. We had a lot of people involved in this. Right? I think we, the community, have actually accomplished something.
Throughout the month of January 1944, Arizonans were gripped by fear as they followed the news of 25 prison escapees fanning out from a Phoenix area prison. The escape would trigger the largest manhunt in Arizona history, bringing in local law enforcement, the FBI, and even Native American scouts. And why not? The world was in the depths of World War, and the prisoners were none other than German POWs.
This was the greatest escape by Axis prisoners of war from a U.S. compound during World War II.
It happened in the desert east of Phoenix, at a prisoner of war camp in Papago Park.
There's not much left today of the former camp. One of the things that you can still see are the foundations for one of the many guard towers that surrounded the compounds here.
The POW camp has been replaced by neighborhoods and baseball fields. But from 1943 to 1946, this is where Italian and German POWs were incarcerated. West of the Crosscut Canal, on both sides of 64th Street, between McDowell and Thomas Roads.
Behind me is the Arizona Crosscut Canal, and this formed the eastern border of the Papago Park POW camp. Directly behind me, where these modern houses are, was Compound 1A, and this is where what the Americans called the Troublemaker Compound.
The men in Compound 1A were not allowed to leave the camp to pick citrus and cotton, like other prisoners, and they were guarded a little more closely than the rest.
These were men that not only had repeatedly escaped from Papago, these were men who had been habitual escapees from other camps.
They were a mixed bag of German Navy personnel. There were senior officers, enlisted men, and famed U-boat commanders, like Captain Jürgen Wattenberg.
Wattenberg was a highly educated, very dedicated officer. He had to be a Nazi, there's no question about that.
Wattenberg and others from Compound 1A were very smart and probably very bored.
And you put all these brilliant minds into one camp, and I don't know why they didn't think they were gonna
Escape? Definitely not through a tunnel. The soil at the camp was so hard, prison officials figured the POWs could never dig their way to freedom. But one rainy night, just before Christmas, that theory was put to the test.
During the hours of darkness of December 23rd and 24th, 1944, the tunnel that had been dug 180 feet from inside Compound 1A to the western side of the Arizona Crosscut Canal was entered and exited by 25 of the POWs.
The digging started about 3 months earlier, outside a shower room next to this coal bin.
Because the big problem the escapees had was disposing of all the dirt they were taking out of the tunnel.
They scattered it throughout the compound and flushed it down the toilet.
They had asked the Americans if they could build a Faustball court, and Faustball is sort of the German equivalent of volleyball. So they took a lot of this dirt that they excavated from the tunnel and used it to make their Faustball court, and they put it underneath the barracks, and they used it in their various gardens right under the noses of all of the American personnel. The tunnel eventually came up. The exit was about here. They had built a wooden ladder for them to come up. So as these teams of escapees got out, in teams of 2 and 3, they got out, would slide down into the canal, which was about waist deep. Then they would wade about 500 yards past the perimeter of the camp before they got out and changed into their dry civilian clothes.
They took such delight in knowing that they were pulling one off on the Amerikanisch.
How the Americans pieced it together was, because of the torrential rain, several of the escapees had turned themselves in very early in the morning on December 24th. Then a roll call later in that day, they discovered that that there were 25 missing from Compound 1A, but they didn't know exactly how they had gotten out.
Another day went by before the tunnel was discovered. By then, the escape was making headlines, and 19 prisoners remained at large.
The plan for the majority of the escapees was to try and make it into Mexico, and then from there into a pro-Nazi country in South America.
Many used maps they had stolen to help them find their way. This one belonged to Heinrich Palmer,
Heinrich Palmer and Reinhard Mark, they made it the furthest of any of them. They made it to within 10 miles of the border, the Mexican border, on foot in 9 days.
3 of the POWs planned to float to Mexico along the Gila and Colorado rivers on a boat they built in camp.
Well, by the time the 3 boatmen, the 3 crazy boatmen, as they were dubbed later, got to the Gila River, they realized that it was not a flowing river.
So they tossed the pieces of their boat aside, and they were captured a short time later. More POWs were apprehended in the days and weeks ahead, until only Captain Wattenberg was left. He had been hiding in a cave north of Phoenix with 2 other escapees. One day they left to find food and never returned.
When Captain Wattenberg realized that they had been caught, he decided to try and make it out of the valley. So one night in late January, he hiked into Phoenix, and he spent the night in the lobby of the Adams Hotel.
He was heading for the train station at about 1:30 in the morning when Phoenix Police Sergeant Gil Brady asked for his ID. Wattenberg told the officer he had left it at home.
Brady asked him to get in the patrol car, and he took him down to the Phoenix Police Station. But within moments of being in the car, Wattenberg said, "I am the big shot you've been looking for."
Wattenberg was the last man captured January 28, 1945. 40 years later, Lloyd Clark and the Papago Trackers group he founded invited Wattenberg and other former POWs back to Arizona.
Well, I was very gratified that I'd been able to put all this together. It was something that I thought should be commemorated because it was a very historic event.
There were many other escapes from POW camps all over the United States during World War II. But the greatest escape happened at Papago Park, when 2 nights before Christmas, a record 25 German prisoners climbed out of the earth and into Arizona history.
Like what you see on Arizona Illustrated? Visit our webpage at azpm.org to watch and share videos from this episode. You'll also find stories from future programs, an easy way to submit your own story idea, an archive of past episodes of Arizona Illustrated, and you'll find everything you need to stay connected with public broadcasting in Southern Arizona. azpm.org. A good parent has to learn about sacrifice, as does anyone who follows their artistic dream as a way of making a living. Our next story takes a look at 3 local men who are both fathers and artists, to hear their reflections on staying true to their children as well as their art.
If you're an artist, you realize that you're a little bit different, you know what I mean? And society views you as different. Society views you until you make a name or money as a shiftless layabout.
It's not selfish, but you definitely, I guess, to really, really focus on something, you kind of shut out the outside world around you.
That's exactly what I told myself. It's like, you are a musician, that's what you love. That's what I want to be. I'll be a musician. I may not be rich, I may not be whatever, but that's what I want to be.
When I turn on, everything, the world to me, looks like something I could add something to it. I'd love to solve the world's problems. I can't do that, so maybe I could put a little Band-Aid on it, a little funny Band-Aid on it. It's like knowing that somebody out there is gonna have a little quirk or a little smile. I'm like, hey, there's Donovan Moore.
I'm Tom Woolbank. I'm a Tucson-based musician, blues musician. I've been playing for about 25 years. I'm an artist as well.
So, my name is Naima Moore, and I have been living in Tucson for 17 years. I'm originally from Paris, France, and I'm a musician.
I got married when I was 27, and I wasn't thinking too much about how it would affect my life, but I was thinking, well, if we have kids, that's great.
When I turned 33, the question was not like, oh, I want to have a child. The question became all of a sudden, it's like, I hope in my life I will experience that, because the idea of never have a child, for me, seemed very sad all of a sudden.
Going back on it, you know, I wish I was in a financial spot to have kids when I was 18 or 19 or 20, you know, because now I'd have a little partner around. But the one thing that I have known, you know, kids are expensive, man. You gotta be ready to dump what you're doing to really sit down on the kid, you know.
Everyone talks about the female biological clock, and everyone's like, oh, it's ticking, you know. It's like, oh, you're getting older, you should have a baby or it's going to become dangerous. And it's like, first of all, smack, you know what I mean? I don't think it's you're being in touch with your feminine side. It's just, it's a male thing as well, you know? You know, if you're ready, you're ready.
What up, dude? Nice shirt.
I think it doesn't change you. It makes you become who you are even more, you know? It brings out the person you are already, but under that new light.
All right. Let's take that hill. Dun dun. You ready? You ready to go swimming?
Yeah, it's hot.
It's hot.
The sun's 1,000 degrees.
It is 1,000.
It brings out something that's like just that was there, but like was not expressed, like being like a parent, a father, a mother. You know, and it's very exciting. It's very, very exciting.
And a dolphin.
And a dolphin?
Your backpack?
Yeah. It's heavy.
Just to focus on another being is a healthy thing. You know, it makes you grow as a person.
Anything you do, there's this little sponge that's gonna soak it up. What having kids taught me is just proper time management. You know, have enough time to turn everything off, to refresh the batteries, to be able to do fun stuff.
Yes. You just need to be productive, and in a way that's like not productive like oh, I'm gonna make tons of things. No, it's just anything you decide to do has to be done, and you just don't. So you cut the, how you say that? Cut the inondation. C'est quand il y a de l'eau qui arrive de tous les côtés.
No.
You cut the crap, because by the way, your hands are in crap quite a bit.
Gone are the days where, you know, I'm going to the office. Here you go, honey. Here's the kids. I'm gone. It's a split job now. You know, fathers are responsible for a lot of, you know, like, I mean, just half as it should be. You know, I mean, just half the raising, nurturing, and you know, you got to change the diapers. You got to make the baby food. You got to do the homework and all that.
You weight things that, is it really worth it for me to hang out till 2 in the morning with a possible hangover? You just prefer being in shape in the next day, because otherwise it's hell, you know?
Count them off.
1, 2, 3.
You adapt as a human being. You take care of business. You just take care of business, and how that impacts your artistic life is it focuses you. It's cool being a dad.
Temper down, solid baby.
Every project that I choose to embark on now, it's, whether it's for financial gain or not, it's something I'm gonna be proud of, and something that I want to, just pass on to my kid and make him, proud of his pop, make my family proud of me.
Yeah, be more productive, professionally, financially also. That's very strange.
watching them progress, watching myself progress because of that. And that's, yeah, I wouldn't change it for the world.
You learn a lot about yourself. You address stuff in your life that makes you a better person that you maybe wouldn't have before.
L'araignée est un espion singulier. Dans sa toile, il attend pour attraper les brigands. Attention, car l'araignée est là.
Ouais, super.
In 1985, Michael Drummond, a 25-year-old assistant manager of a grocery store in Cottonwood, Arizona, developed heart problems. In August of that year, he would become the first person successfully given an artificial heart transplant as a bridge to receiving a human heart. Months later, Drummond would again be given the Jarvik 7 artificial heart, this time at a press conference from the vault.
But Michael, this is really very special for us. It did work, and there's nobody, I'm sure, that's happier than you about that.
Michael Drummond could only say one word, thanks, after he was given the actual Jarvik 7 heart that kept him alive for 9 days some 4 months ago. Drummond was the first person to have the artificial heart implanted as a bridge to life. He later received a human heart. The inventor of the polyurethane heart, Dr. Robert Jarvik, told today's news conference that the knowledge gained from Drummond's experience with the artificial heart has led to work on modifications.
The changes we're making deal with specifically the areas around the valves and connectors where in Michael's case so dramatically we were able to identify the blood clots. Although they were small, they certainly were real, and although they caused him no permanent problem, they caused us all a lot of concern.
Jarvik says a federal Food and Drug Administration decision in December to require quarterly reports on each patient who receives an artificial heart and to require FDA clearance for each future operation does not create any real problems for the future of the Jarvik 7. He says the decision mostly means more paperwork that may slow the process down until the modified heart is released.
We've never been able to really have a person understand to a different context, you know, what the heart is when they can hold it after it's really been inside working.
It was what kept me alive, you know. That's all you can really say about it.
Thank you for joining us here on Arizona Illustrated. Next week, how a photograph of a rare jaguar in southern Arizona spurred a debate over critical habitat. I'll look back at the debates, protests, and deals it took to establish a Martin Luther King holiday in Arizona. One woman's life and death during the Holocaust is reflected in the story of a Tucson woman's parents who survived, and this new thing called recycling from the vault. I'm Tom McNamara. See you next week.